Good morning, my name is Tim Chamberlain and we are stood in front of a late model PDP-1170. This end of it would have had things like the memory box, other storage and capacity expansion things, and then in this side was the processor box. The main processor box is down underneath and with power supplies right on the bottom and in the middle. We know it's a late model PDP-1170 because it doesn't have the nice switch panel which the original ones would have had, so that you could actually make it do things manually yourself. After that we have a further expansion box and a strange tape drive, I suppose you would call it. It only accepted the smallest tapes that were available. It looks a bit like this. Get it out of the box. So this was a small tape. Typically it was used to load software onto the machine. The tape drive is different to later or other tape drives in as much as you had to manually thread the tape all the way through, and there was no, it's hard work, and there was no reel at the other end to put it on. You simply manually threaded it round yourself and gripped it and hoped it worked, and then wound it on, and then you were ready to go. As I say, they were fairly unique. Later, other tape drives were either auto-load or they had a big reel at the other side and they took bigger tapes. Next, we move on to the disk storage within the computer. Disk drives in this era were typically a removable pack that you inserted into the drive. So these are the two drives that are attached to this PDP-1170. They each had a capacity of 67 megabytes, and these later models were much faster access than the earlier models, although that's all a relative terminology. If my memory serves me correctly, the access time on these drives was around the 30 millisecond mark. As I said, they were removable packs. You had a pack like this, which was with a broken lid. You removed the base, put the pack in, screwed it into position, took the lid off, and then you were ready to use your drive, spin it up to speed. This is something that we used to do a lot of a night as we were doing copies for backup purposes. You would typically copy one disk to another one, swap the packs around, take your copy disk out, put the original disk in, swap the other disk, and copy that disk that way. And this was a chore that used to be split around people, whereby you know, tonight it was my turn, tomorrow night somebody else did it. We all had to stay late on one time or another. Beneath this we have an RL02, which was a 5 megabyte drive, again with a removable pack, but you just clipped it in, had a little door that opened somewhere, and when you clipped it in, you lifted the lid, clipped the pack in, and you had a 5 megabyte removable drive. That would not have been on a high-end machine like a 1170, that would have been on a low-end machine. Then later on, still, we got floppy drives. Not the floppy drives we all know and love nowadays. They're 3.5-inch floppy, even those they are relatively defunct. Then you have the 5 1/4, which was replaced by that. In this era, we had an 8-inch floppy drive. Originally, they held 80k. And again, nice simple thing, you slot it in just like you do on such drives as this, and you have to click a lid down. Of course, modern ones you would just put a floppy in. I say modern, we don't have, you try buying something with a floppy drive on it nowadays and you won't succeed. So that's the type of storage options that were available in those days. The capacity is laughable nowadays. This was a large drive at 67 megabytes. Okay, this is Tim Chamberlain again. You remember we loaded our mag tape onto the funny little twiddly thing a bit earlier on the PDP-1170. This is a much more modern tape drive, if that's the correct use of the term modern. And we're just going to load the tape onto this one as a comparison. So I open the door, I post the tape over the little reel, I get myself a little piece hanging out, and I press the load button when I can see it. There we go, the load button. And it vacuum sucks the tape in, and you will hear whooshing noises as it sucks the tape round the spindles. You'll notice it says it's loading. It's loaded the tape now, and it's running it backwards and forwards to read the ID off the tape as to the correct density and what type of tape it is. This was a brand new tape, so it has no ID on it. What will be interesting now is we lift the lid. It will be interlocked, won't it? I'll power it off, and then we'll be able to lift the lid, and you can see how the loaded tape looks. So here it comes. It's spun it all the way around here. It's used a vacuum system to suck the tape all the way through round this spool and then wound it on.